I wanted to wait for V Shoujo's response before giving an update to this whole story, but with the way things have developed over the last 24 hours here, I'm not confident we'll ever get a response from them because I don't think there's going to be anyone left at the company for that. It has been a complete collapse of this company, and it is still radio silence from V No Show here, and I've just got to give you this update because it is crazy what's happened. In a nutshell, V Shoujo was, I'm going to use past tense because this shit is in the dirt right now. It has been fucking blasted to Valhalla. V Shoujo was an agency that represented some of the biggest VTubers in the space, especially in the English-speaking VTuber space, which is a huge market. These creators pull in thousands of viewers every single stream and are responsible for millions of dollars being generated to the V Shoujo company. And what's happened recently is tons of that talent had been leaving V Shoujo, and yesterday, Iron Mouse made a video that really opened Pandora's box here to the scumminess of V Shoujo, where she explains why she is also leaving, and it's because they owe her a significant amount of money personally, but they also owe over $500,000 to charity that Iron Mouse raised for charity that V Shoujo was supposed to be responsible for donating on her behalf, something they still haven't done a year later, but I'm sure it's coming any day now. There's just been a big clog at the office, but they're very excited to get to it. And other creators under the VTuber agency have come forward with similar horror stories here about the way that they handled finances, where some of them also are owed a significant amount of money that they haven't been paid. So it seems like V Shoujo treats payment to their talent the same way I treat changing the oil in my car. I'll get to it eventually. It's not that big a deal. Just keep kicking the can down the road, and eventually my fucking car is just going to break down, and I'm going to be tight. I'm going to be real mad. And much like what's going to happen to my car because I just keep procrastinating the oil change, this company has completely broken down now. From everything I have seen, every VTuber that was represented by V Shoujo, all of the ones I can find, have either already packed their bags and left or announced that they are leaving. I have yet to find a single person that's like digging their heels into the ground, lat spreading and saying, I'm staying with V Shoujo, baby. I'm keeping here. This is my ship, and I'm sailing with the crew. I have not found a single VTuber that is standing by them because it's a pretty indefensible thing that they are accused of here, and they haven't shed any light on their side of things yet, which admittedly it has been a pretty short period of time, but with so many people having similar encounters and similar stories about V Shoujo, it feels very unlikely that there's any wiggle room for some kind of justified reason why they've been withholding payments and not donating what they owe to charity. It feels like it's kind of, you know, checkmate here. I don't think a response would save them in any way, but I mean, maybe they could shed some crazy light here on, like, what's going on and why. I don't really know, but no one's even waiting for that because of how diabolical it is. And if you go to their website right now and, like, try and buy merch, it's just taken offline. Like, you can't even do that anymore. So it really seems like this company is fucked. It reminds me of from Call of Duty 4. 50,000 VTubers used to create here. Now it's a ghost town, and it's V Shoujo's office. Real quick though, I want to give you like a bit of good news that's come from all of this. Iron Mouse did a Tiltify link in the description, and that's been shared a lot from a lot of people that want to support because the charity that she was raising money for never saw the money that she earned for them. And since this blew up, the Tiltify link has exploded, and over $600,000 is being donated to the Immune Deficiency Foundation, which I think is very, very nice. I think that is great. So at least something positive has come from this, but overall, it's just like a really sad set of circumstances because of how many people are now going to be out of a job because I don't see how V Shoujo has some kind of triumphant bounce back, like a phoenix rising from the ashes here, because it's not even ashes, it's actually just like feces. Like it'd be like, you know, the swamp monster rising from my septic tank. There is really nothing they could do to ever get their reputation back unless somehow all of them are lying, which I just don't think is possible. I don't think that's the case. I want to show you another VTuber that actually confronted the CEO of V Shoujo's Japan branch live on stream about how she was also not getting the payments she was owed for quite some time.
First of all, I was already planning to leave V Shoujo this month. Specifically, on the 31st. Because, V Shoujo hasn't paid a significant amount of money, to me too.
っていうところはあったんですけれども。
So did you just say that V Shoujo JP itself was doing good?
そうですね。
In finances too?
そうですね。
You haven't paid me.
This was a pretty wacky stream. This shit goes insano style. Her confronting the CEO of this company, her boss, live on stream, and also the fact that her boss agreed to do it in the first place blows my mind. That is baffling. Like, humiliation rituals aren't this brutal. But here he is, and she is not holding anything back. She is not pulling punches. She's not sugarcoating things. It is a smackdown, and it is raw.
I quit V Shoujo today.
はい。
V Shoujo 辞めます、今日。
はい。
はい。31日予定でしたけど、今日辞めます。I quit. This is very wrong. ローさん。
はい。
Very, very wrong. You're telling me that V Shoujo JP was doing good? Looked like, at least.
はい。
Doing good.
払っていたとしても、ケイソンに払っていたとしても大丈夫だったっていう感じですね。
You're telling me you could have paid me?
そういうことです。
Then where is it? Where is it? I want it now. Oh. Did you just die? What?
Yeah.
What?
What a fascinating conversation here. So, the Japan branch CEO claims that the Japan branch was doing fine, and they could have paid her, but they didn't. We could have done it, but we decided not to. What, big whoop? You want to fight about it? So what? So, as I understand it, he is saying that while they were thriving, they could have afforded to pay her what she was owed, but from what I've gathered, their hands were kind of tied because the English branch was struggling when it comes to their finances, which apparently caused a disconnect here where they couldn't pay the talent in the Japan branch because the goobers on the English side of things were floundering. That's my understanding of it from everything I've read about all of this. But either way, the brass tacks of it is a lot of talent wasn't getting paid, allegedly. And as you just saw, she quit right to his face. Just actually said, I'm fucking out. Where's my money? Put it right here. Set this shit in my hand. Put the money in my hand right now, or I'm leaving. Okay, I can't help but notice there's here. I'm out. So she left, and literally every VTuber I can find that was with V Shoujo has also left. This was a speedrun corpo death here. This was a snowball that turned into an avalanche that turned into a fucking meteor that blasted V Shoujo's headquarters and annihilated them like the dinosaurs. It went fast. It really reminds me of a classic blunder in the corporate world online with Artesian Builds. Anyone remember Artesian Builds? They were kind of like the top dog when it came to system integrators online. Well, one of the top dogs. They were a huge player. Tens of millions of dollars worth of like revenue. And then one stream, the CEO let his mask slip a little too much, and he showed that he was a douchebag. I'm talking turbo redditor loser douchebag. Insufferable. They were doing a giveaway. The giveaway winner was a smaller streamer, and for some reason he stuck up their nose at them, insulting them, making a big stink about it, like, oh, you're just way too small. Yikes. Ooh, look who just won this giveaway. A fucking plebeian? Ooh, yucky. Pew.
2K followers is under my threshold. 3 days ago is within my threshold. Long streams, which is good. An Artesian Builds GIF panel. See if you have redeeming qualities.
What happened if he's personally bought 10 PCs?
She
I guess
could be international.
Watching that clip back still makes my skin crawl. It is so cringe. It is awful. Even saying, like, let's see if you have any redeeming qualities. Oh my god. But this clip is infamous. It sank the whole company. That moment was the stake driven through the vampire's heart. It killed Artesian builds overnight. Everybody left that company, obviously myself included, and it died that day. The same phenomenon has just now happened to VShojo. Within 24 hours, everyone seems to have left this agency. I don't think there's any chance for it to make some kind of miraculous comeback. Didn't work for Artesian builds, and I don't foresee VShojo having some kind of, like, silver bullet here, some kind of ace up their sleeve that would, like, save them in any capacity, because now too many people are aware that they're not a good company. There were things that were very wrong with this organization, and some of the talent that people love, some of their most beloved creators, were mistreated by them and misled by them. And I certainly didn't expect it to be this quick. Knowing what I know about VTuber agencies, their contracts are more like hostage negotiations than they are like partnership agreements. I thought for sure VShojo would have clauses in there that would prevent people from just leaving like this and then, like, you know, publicly insulting them and divulging information about why like this. But I'm happy I was wrong here and that the talent does have the freedom to both keep their IP and explain why they're leaving and leave when they want. That's very nice that they weren't locked down, like shackled to VShojo, where they could, like, shut them up and, like, try and control the narrative. As I said in the last video, VShojo is one of the very few VTuber agencies that I wasn't super privy to the behind-the-scenes work and the contracts that they do. So I guess the claim was right about freedom, where they do actually have, like, pretty breathable contracts that is allowing them to just leave like this. That is a good thing. I bet they're pretty upset about it. They're probably feeling very sore, not trying to lock them down and, like, prevent bad-mouthing the company and poo-pooing on VShojo on the way out, like many other VTuber agencies have built into their contracts. Again, not going to get too deep into the specifics, but this is something you probably won't see happen to any other VTuber agency. So I guess it really was true that they did have pretty breathable contracts. And it's nice to see that the talent is using that freedom to let their voices be heard and not want to associate with a company that they don't support anymore for some very scummy practices. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little update to this because this was pretty shocking to see how quickly it all just collapsed for VShojo. This was a company that was worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. They had like 4 of the top 10 English-speaking VTubers under their umbrella. Now they have nothing. It's pretty crazy. And it's not like it was all because of Iron Mouse. Iron Mouse was just like the lightning rod that allowed other content creators to feel confident enough to share their stories as well, and it became very clear that VShojo wasn't a company that most people wanted to associate with. Anyway, that's really about it. So yeah. There's a topic I cover from time to time that always seems to ruffle some feathers and get people squirming in their chairs in anger, because I have less than kind things to say about some of the biggest players in the industry. But I just can't help myself. I can't bite my tongue on it. I'm like Winnie the Pooh poking a beehive because I'm addicted to the honey inside. And in this case, that honey is vindication. For a while now, I have bah-humbugged VTuber agencies. I've seen a lot of the contracts that some of the top talent were locked into with these organizations, and they are extraordinarily corrupt. I think the agencies in this space are exploitative, and they treat their talent more like prisoners. It is unbelievable the depths of greed that these agencies in the VTuber space have succumbed to. But before I dive deeper into the spaghetti and the meatballs on my disdain for VTuber agencies in the industry, I would like to give you the catalyst for why I'm talking about it again today. It's because Iron Mouse just made a really sad video about why she's leaving VShojo. VShojo being another huge player in the VTuber space. They are a massive agency that's represented some of the top talent.
Unfortunately, I recently found out that for the past couple of months, I have been misled by VShojo. With the information that I currently have, I believe that I am owed a significant amount of funds, which I have not been paid. And most importantly, the thing that hurts me the most is that the Immune Deficiency Foundation, which is the most important charity to me, and also the reason why I'm here today, is owed over $500,000 from VShojo.
For those that don't know who Iron Mouse is, she is one of the biggest streamers on Twitch in terms of subscribers. She even broke the all-time subscriber record, and she has a primary immunodeficiency disease. She has CVID. So she does a lot of charitable work for this organization, and apparently she's just discovered that VShojo hasn't fully paid what they owed her personally, and they haven't paid the money that they owe to the charitable foundation that she was fundraising for, something that she does often, but VShojo is required in this process because they handle her money in certain cases, which is not uncommon in the space. Like, I'm going to get deeper into like a lot of things with VTuber agencies that I've tiptoed around quite a bit in the past, but I want to like fully go into the weeds of it here. But let me just go ahead and explain where that number's coming from, the $500,000 owed to charity that VShojo still hasn't paid.
They promptly sent the payment, and the subathon was a huge success. So I decided to do it again the next year. My last subathon was one of the biggest events I've ever done. The support was overwhelming, and I ended up getting over 300,000 subscribers and breaking the all-time sub record. But this also meant that we had raised $515,000 for the Immune Deficiency Foundation. I once again asked VShojo to make the donation on my behalf, but unfortunately, still a year later, VShojo has not paid the charity.
So in a nutshell, Iron Mouse ran a subathon. It was extremely successful and raised a ton of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Immune Deficiency Foundation. And VShojo did pay it out the first time around, but when she came back for the second time the following year, it was even bigger, it broke records, and it raised over $500,000 that were supposed to go to the Immune Deficiency Foundation that has still not been paid out to the charitable organization to this day, according to Iron Mouse. Now, I've seen a little bit of confusion, people wondering why would VShojo even be handling that money in the first place? Why wouldn't it just come directly from Iron Mouse since it's her Twitch? Well, that's where you get into the really stinky territory where, in a lot of cases, these agencies, they handle the finances of the talent. Like, they put their grubby paws on it before the talent does. So it's not uncommon in the space for the agreement between talent and agency to have the agency directly handle like their Twitch subs and their Twitch revenue and their Twitch ads, that kind of thing. And in the full video, Iron Mouse goes deeper into this, so I highly encourage you to check out the full thing for the entire scoop. But in her case specifically, that was actually kind of appealing to her because then she would be able to stay even more private because she really values her anonymity. So having VShojo involved in that process was actually kind of a big deal to her. And for previous fundraising through Tiltify, it wasn't a problem, but when it came to the subathon money, since it was going through Twitch subs and everything, it meant VShojo was going to be involved in this process, and the first time it was fine, it apparently went off without issue, but this time, when the money was even higher, well, some kind of screws must have went loose over there at the VShojo headquarters. I guess that shit just fucking burst into flames or something, and they just haven't got around to it. They're still putting out some fires, and they'll get to it any day now. VShojo would be responsible for donating that money on her behalf, an obligation that they still haven't fulfilled all this time later, according to Iron Mouse. It's diabolical, withholding over $500,000 to charity, and also withholding money that Iron Mouse is allegedly owed as well. And what's even crazier is how unsurprised I am by it. Now, full disclosure, I didn't know too much about VShojo's inner workings. That was one of the few agencies I wasn't super privy to on like the behind the scenes of. But I'd always heard good things, but I always had skepticism because of how the industry functions at the agency level from the other ones I know. And this kind of dirty, scummy, greedy business is just so standard for these agencies in the space. It is sickening. Now, VShojo is going through big turbulence right now. They're losing some of their top talent, like even before Iron Mouse's video. About a month ago, they made a post about how Giga was going to be departing VShojo. And then just 48 hours later, they announced Zen would also be leaving VShojo, one of their original members. So there's definitely been some, curious Georges out there wondering what's going on at VShojo that's got everyone leaving. What's this exodus from VShojo all about? Fun fact, Giga is actually with us at Cheeky now. We're not like a VTuber agency. That's not what I'm trying to get across. Our soap. She really likes our soap, Cheeky Soap. So she's partnered with us at Cheeky. And she is an absolute sweetheart. That's what I was trying to get across. The point is, some really good people have been leaving VShojo, and now Iron Mouse have dropped this video about some very alleged scummy practices here at the VShojo corporate level, and I don't know how VShojo recovers from it going forward. They haven't made a statement yet. It's still a little too fresh as of me making this video. I'm very curious what they're going to say about it. If I had to spitball, I would imagine that their next play will be donating that money to the charitable foundation. I imagine they donate the $515K to the Immune Deficiency Foundation or whatever the exact number was. I bet they'll do that to desperately try and save face. I don't think the community will respond well to it because it's very clear that they're just doing it now because of the public pressure that's being exerted on them. I don't know how they move forward with a good reputation. I don't think all of their talent's going to leave overnight. I imagine a lot of those contracts, in fact, I'm confident a lot of those contracts lock them down for quite a while with some non-disparagement clauses in there and everything. I bet there is a lot of things at play where the talent won't be able to leave even if they really want to. And I can only hope that the community here doesn't start attacking the VShojo talent for staying, because I imagine in a lot of cases they don't have a choice. Now, that's kind of the situation in a nutshell, but I want to dive deeper into agencies as a whole. I've kind of teased it a little bit throughout the video. And I know people like to talk about VTubing as a whole, like it's some kind of niche that's not mainstream. That couldn't be further from the truth. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is so lucrative. And these agencies have swooped in and made sure they are the ones getting the lion's share of that money, and they'll kind of trickle down, drip feed a little milk from their titties to the talent that's under their umbrella. And what's even more disgusting is they fed people shit and gave them a taste for it, an acquired palate, normalizing their greed, where the talent, the ones that are actually gathering the audience, the actual VTubers, they don't see most of the money that they bring in. The agency does. That includes merch. That includes their Twitch subs. That includes YouTube revenue. Pretty much any piece of the pie that has dollars, doubloons in it, the agency is the one that's got their fingers in it, and the VTuber gets pieces of it, tiddlywinks. And I think it is so ass backwards. It has always rubbed me the wrong way, so I've always talked very negatively about VTuber agencies, much to the chagrin of the VTuber audience. The audience that watches VTubers is very loyal to their favorite creators in the space. So they get very upset when the 5'6" Florida man Neanderthal shoots spitballs at the agency that represents their favorite VTuber, because the community, the relationship between the agency and the VTuber, is one that's supposed to be built on a tight connection, like this partnership, almost like a family. But nothing could be further from the truth. It's about as much of a family as the prison warden is to the prisoners. I just think it is completely unacceptable the way a lot of these agencies treat their talent. I also think a lot of people have been completely misled by them on the industry as a whole, where they act like there's only one path to success when it comes to VTubing. Or at least they did, not so much these days. It's starting to kind of get a little more clear that you don't have to sign with them, but for the longest time, it was as if there was only one path to success in the space, which was signing with an agency, where they basically give you a career. They grow you through their network. They give you all the tools to grow, but they basically own you. And I know the argument a lot of people make is, well, they gave you your career. You do owe them like 90% of the money that you generate. That makes sense. Without them, you were nothing. And I just think that is completely delusional. I think you've been brainwashed to think that. It's a little different nowadays where so many people are doing really well independent. There are so many independent VTubers that are crushing it, and a lot of formally contracted talent for agencies have left to be indie and are still doing really well. So it's being proven that you don't need these agencies to succeed as a VTuber. And I understand, like, you know, they do help speed up the growth of the career because then they just plug and play to like their network and just have eyes on you by default. But from everything I've seen, it just never really seems worth the trade-off. Like, you never get a better deal. So like, let's say you start with them and then you explode and become the biggest VTuber in the world. All the ones I've seen, the contracts don't scale with that success, so you still are locked into a bad deal. And now the agency just makes a killing off of your success and you kind of stay in the same spot, more or less. Like, it just doesn't ever really feel worth it to do that when you can still be very successful without these agencies. And it just sucks to see that it is still so common that these agencies are greedy scumbags, like in this case here with VShojo, apparently. But anyway, just wanted to yap about this a bit. That's about it. See ya. It has been a rough month for Bungie. They are struggling right now, looking like me trying to reach the top shelf in my pantry. I just made a video covering the lawsuit that they are getting spanked in. That's a little exaggeratory, but it is a very messy lawsuit where they're being accused of stealing for their Red War campaign as well as Curse of Osiris, and they can't actually fight back against those claims because they vaulted that content and no longer can access it themselves. It is just banished to the Shadow Realm. They can't access it, so instead they've been relying on YouTubers' videos and lore breakdown as evidence to prove they didn't steal from this other writer's work. But the judge biblically smacked that down, saying that it will not be accepted. So they're not accepting the YouTube videos, and Bungie themselves can't access the content. So I don't know what the fuck they're going to do about that lawsuit right now, all because they can't stop vaulting content. They're addicted to it. And now today, it has just come out that they have plagiarized another artist's work for Marathon. And it's a lot. And it's also not just claims of plagiarism, and it's not just baseless accusations all around like something really small or trivial that you kind of have to like squint your eyes at and be like, oh, I can kind of see a similarity. It's not like they just stole like, you know, a big Chungus shape from somebody without crediting the artist. They stole so much directly from an artist named Anti-Real. And they have also now come forward, the Marathon dev team have come forward and said that, yeah, it is indeed confirmed they did steal some of that art, but they're downplaying how much of it was plagiarized and kind of pushing the blame on a former employee. So we're going to go through this together because I think it's a lot bigger than they are making it seem. So this was the post that just blew up last night. The Marathon Alpha released recently and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. The side-by-sides that she provides are damning. So on the right you can see her poster, and on the left you can see the Marathon Alpha. You can see Aleph is lifted directly from her poster and just copied multiple times in the Marathon Alpha. Is the same song and dance here with another piece of evidence that she provides. You can see the arrows copy and pasted, but they were actually flipped here, which is the most effort that they went through with this plagiarism. Like copying the homework but trying to make it look a little different. They changed the orientation of the arrows. But then everything else, they didn't even bother trying to make even slight alterations. The symbols are pretty much exact, except for the first symbol there is like in a different direction, but it's still the exact same symbol. They just made it do like little 360s. It is very clear that they took these designs and just copied them into their game. This one is the most shameless, where you can see a tweet from Anti-Real back in June of 2024 saying, I hid loss in my designs 6 years ago and nobody caught on. And then here's a new post from someone in the alpha saying, here from the future, if anyone doubts the theft of your art, this also confirms it. And it's a screenshot in Marathon, and you can see loss. Now, if you don't know what that symbol is, it's a meme. I'm sure you've at least heard of the meme, loss. So Anti-Real's saying that in her art, she hid that. And then in Marathon, it just magically turns up And you know, it's kind of a little bit of an odd coinky dink, you know what I'm saying? I've also seen this one floating around, which is completely indefensible. No matter how brain dead and determined you are to defend Marathon, there is no mental gymnastics you could possibly use to explain this away. On the right, you can see Anti-Real's poster from the Anti-Real Daily Series, and on the left, you can see Marathon, and you can literally still see it say Anti-Real Daily Series in that green box. They changed the colors but kept everything the same, including the text that says Anti-Real Daily Series. They just tried to cover it very loosely, very lazily, but you can still make it out. Worth mentioning that it's not like they just took her art and then used it in one spot, one time, hidden, you know, off the beaten path, like a little Easter egg behind a dumpster. We have to spin around 4 times and then you get to see what they plagiarized. No, this is art that they stole and used frequently throughout the game. It is a core part of the design, and you see them a lot in the alpha. Apparently, I didn't play the alpha because I'm not really interested in the game. There are so many screenshots in so many places that all of this shows up, and they never paid her for her work. They didn't give her any kind of, you know, credit for it. Nothing. Nothing at all. And also, there are numerous Bungie employees that follow her account. Like, there are people on the Bungie team that follow her account. It's not like they just didn't know about her, and they're not even trying to hide the fact that they did know her art. So it's pretty clear cut here. Now, Anti-Real said, Bungie is of course not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I have refined for the last decade, but clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. In 10 years, I have never made a consistent income from this work, and I am tired of designers from huge companies mood-boarding and parasiting my designs while I struggle to make a living. It's more than mood-boarding, though. Clearly, they did just directly steal the artwork from her, and they very easily could have hired her. If they loved her design language that she had refined, and they wanted to use it to help steer the aesthetic of the game and use it in the game, they could have absolutely hired her. Or, at the very least, paid her for the work. You know, the legal correct thing to do here. It's just craziness. They instead just ripped it. One-to-one, just ripped it with no alterations or anything. And that then calls into question this whole aesthetic that Marathon has. One of the main things people would praise for Marathon, a lot of people I know hated the alpha. It wasn't received overly well from what I saw. But the one thing that remained consistent is that a lot of players really liked the look of the game. And now this comes out, it really feels like the look of the game is stolen from other artists' work. Like, that's now the perception a lot of people have. It's just so fried. I just can't believe how blatant this plagiarism was. Now, as I mentioned, the Marathon dev team did make a statement. We immediately investigated a concern regarding unauthorized use of artist decals in Marathon and confirmed that a former Bungie artist included these in a texture sheet that was ultimately used in-game. Very convenient that it was a former Bungie artist, even though there's still current Bungie employees following this same account. Calls into question the legitimacy of that claim that this is all just some, like, rogue operative that, you know, became a loose cannon and went off book and stole this work without us knowing. The issue was unknown by our existing art team, and we are still reviewing how this oversight occurred. We take matters like this very seriously. We have reached out to Anti-Real to discuss this issue and are committed to doing right by the artist. As a matter of policy, we do not use the work of artists without their permission. Well, not only a matter of policy, that's a matter of law. You can't just steal people's work like that. Yeah, I don't know why they try to, like, play this moral high ground. We would never do this. It is part of our mission statement. When you walk into the Bungie HQ, it says, "We shall not steal," and it's what sets us apart from the rest of the industry. To prevent similar issues in the future, we are conducting a thorough review of our in-game assets, specifically those done by the former Bungie artist, and implementing stricter checks to document all artist contributions. We value the creativity and dedication of all artists who contribute to our games, and we are committed to doing right by them. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. As other outlets have mentioned, this is not the first time Bungie has stolen art. It happened in Destiny 2 as well, so they do have a history of doing it occasionally, but to this scale is unheard of. This is probably one of the larger instances of just blatant plagiarism I've seen from a AAA game. It is egregious. And what's mind-boggling to me is I went into the comments there on those tweets, and there are people defending it saying that it's just, you know, a coincidence. Anti-Real doesn't own the corporate brutalist style. This is ridiculous. What are you guys even apologizing for? They're actually just shutting out reality. It's not like they just drew inspiration from Anti-Real's brutalist style. They literally took it and copy and pasted it without their permission. They didn't pay for it. They didn't even credit the artist. That is not legal. You can't do that. And yet there's still people just, plugging their ears to it in order to continue to shill Marathon on Twitter. Blows my mind. It is indefensible. No matter how you spin it, they stole that work. And they are openly saying that they did steal that work and downplaying the severity the severity of how much was taken. I think it's a lot more than they're letting on here, because you can see tons of screenshots from tons of different examples. Unless that former Bungie employee that they're pinning it all on was like a really higher up on the food chain here that was responsible for a ton of the art in the game, it really feels like it's probably more than just that person, because there is a lot. Anyway, though, just another bad day for Bungie here. They're really they're going through it right now, and it's all entirely their own fault, really. That lawsuit, that could have been handled pretty quickly if they didn't just constantly vault content that people paid money for. Taking away people's access to it, including their own access to it. That's on them. Stealing other people's art, that's also on them. It's entirely Bungie's fault for all the problems they're facing right now. Shit's crazy. That's about it. So yeah. Bungie is engaged in a lawsuit right now that I find extremely interesting, and I tickled it a little bit last night on stream, but I want to get into the actual spaghetti and meatballs today. Now, obviously, this isn't Bungie's first rodeo with lawsuits. They've been involved in a couple high-profile ones I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, but I wouldn't necessarily call them seasoned veterans, that this is just, business as usual. Not like Nintendo, who has more lawsuits than Elon Musk does children. Bungie has few and far between lawsuits, but most of you hear about them, such as like their big one not long ago where they actually had a huge victory over cheat makers, which I think was great. Their current battle, though, has got them fucking stun-locked here. They are being sued by a writer who claims that Destiny stole his story for their campaign for Red War and Curse of Osiris. And Bungie is having a very difficult time defending themselves here. They can't actually produce the content to prove that they didn't steal from him. Thus, the lawsuit is still ongoing, and they're kind of getting embarrassed because of one simple thing that they have become so accustomed to doing. It's become like a fucking addiction. Sunsetting content. If you've played Destiny, you're familiar with this, and it's not just Destiny. Other games also take content out of the game over time. But Destiny takes entire paid things that you bought with your own clams, will take it out of the game and vault it. Now we're going to do like a full dive in here, like an actual colonoscopy on this case with everything we know right now, but I just want to give you the gist here. One of the things they vaulted is the entirety of the campaign for Destiny 2 when you first bought the game, Red War. I have bitched about that for the longest time now, that the campaign you bought when this game came out is no longer in the game at all and is completely inaccessible to the players. I think that is an unbelievably ridiculous concept, but I'm not going to just rant and rave about that like a lunatic again. But the community had always been under the impression that when content like Red War is vaulted, Bungie themselves can still access it. Like, they haven't just, poofed it out of existence like some kind of fairy godparents took care of it. They haven't just erased it from the corporeal realm. But it turns out that is the case. Bungie has openly admitted they also can't access the content anymore in this lawsuit. They actually can't even get their paws on it either, thus they can't really defend their claims of innocence against the copyright claims. It's a mess. Like, they actually have just banished it to the fucking shadow realm here. Anyway, the lawsuit was started by a writer named Matthew Kelsey Martineau, and he worked under the pseudonym Casper Cole, and he published a story on his blog that he claims was stolen by Bungie for the Red War and Curse of Osiris story elements. Most notably, Red Legion, he's saying, was taken directly from his writings. Other shared elements mentioned between Red War and the DLC Curse of Osiris are things like celestial object hovering over Earth, war beasts, and more. From what I can find, Casper Cole had this published on his WordPress in 2013, 2014-ish, and this lawsuit was filed last year. Guessing he's not a big first-person shooter fan, must have not played any Destiny until then. But I'm gonna tell you, buckle up, sports fans, might be a hot take. There's nothing I see listed here that seems unique to Casper Cole's writing. A celestial object hovering over Earth, flamethrowers being used, and emergency failsafes. Like, come on, that's all pretty generic sci-fi shit. That's like getting mad that another shooter also has bullets in the game. To me, that seems completely like a non-issue. That doesn't scream, copyright infringement, plagiarism. Now, if you want to talk about the names like War Beasts and Red Legion being exactly the same, I still think that's a moot point because those aren't really unique names either, especially considering Destiny. The name of everything in that game is basically just like a title or like a caveman naming it. The Traveler, the Witness, the Left Shoe, the Accountant, the Bath Master, War Bath, Bath War. Like, that's kind of just the whole naming scheme of that game. So Red Legion and War Beast, that doesn't scream that they stole something from this guy. There is nothing that I've seen listed in this lawsuit that makes me actually think Bungie stole from this guy's fucking WordPress in 2013, 2014 to make the Destiny storyline. But the timing of this lawsuit could not be better for Casper Cole because Bungie themselves can't combat it. They are unable to produce the content that they are being accused of stealing because they don't have access to it themselves. Bungie archived the original code that comprised the Red War and Curse of Osiris campaigns known as legacy builds, according to Tyson Green. However, the Red War and Curse of Osiris legacy builds can no longer run because their outdated code is incompatible with Destiny 2's underlying operational framework, which has evolved considerably since the Red War and Curse of Osiris campaigns were retired. As a result, Bungie cannot feasibly provide the court with the original Destiny 2 game as it existed in 2017, including the accused Red War and Curse of Osiris campaigns in any operable or reviewable form, nor will Bungie be able to produce the accused campaigns in operable or reviewable form if this matter proceeds to formal discovery. So after they put them on the bench, took them out behind the barn and put them down, they no longer can get them back because they've updated the game too much. So they can't actually get the game again. So when they made a motion to dismiss this case, they were basically showing up with their pants down. They had nothing to show. So what they relied on was YouTube videos. But not just YouTube videos, wiki pages as well. Bungie insisted the attached videos are the best possible way for the court to review the accused work. Exhibit B was a 10-hour lore video put together by a YouTuber named My Name is Biff. Banger video, by the way. Exhibit C was a cutscene compilation, again put together by a fan, which is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. But the judge, Susie Morgan, she wasn't playing ball with it. She was not pleased with this maneuver, and it was not sufficient. So she denied this motion to dismiss. The court will not consider the exhibits attached to defendant's motion to dismiss and will not convert the defendant's motion to dismiss to a motion for summary judgment. There has not been sufficient time for discovery, and the attachments are admittedly of third-party origination. Their authenticity has not been established. Basically, Bungie brought piss to a shit fight here, and the judge was not having it. She said, I'm not watching these video essays. You scram with this. Wipe it in your ass and get out of the court with this. Thus, the lawsuit is proceeding. The case is going forward. And I really don't know what Bungie is going to do. They are adamant that it can't be restored, which is pretty mind-boggling to me. I don't know how they wouldn't have like backups of previous builds of the engine or something just for a case like this, to be honest, where you need an older build of the engine or the framework so that way you could restore these things should you ever want to down the line, especially with things like remasters and remakes being so commonplace. It just makes sense to me that you would still have something like that. But I'm just a fucking idiot with a tiny little reptile brain, so maybe I'm on the crack pipe with that take. But what I think I'm 100% in the right on here is that it is ridiculous to be vaulting content in the first place if there is no means ever of getting it back. That is paid content. People paid for that. I paid for that when it came out. And I haven't been able to play it for 5 years and will likely never be able to play it again. Same with everybody else on the fucking planet, it seems. I don't really know what the next move is for Bungie. Maybe they'll start submitting goddamn Let's Plays to the courts or something. Like, here, check this out. Look how much fun they're having. No mention of Casper Cole anywhere. No one's picking up on the similarities. Check it out. Like, I don't know. They're going to have to find a way to actually get the campaign back. But, again, I'm not a lawyer either. I feel like Casper Cole's team would probably then make a case that it's been altered. I'm not trying to go like full anime protagonist here, like it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Season 2. Next, you're going to say it's been altered. But I feel like that'd be the natural evolution of the argument here in this case. Because if Bungie somehow does produce a reviewable and operable Red War or Curse of Osiris campaign to present to the courts, who's to say they haven't just taken out the offending material of the lawsuit that it points out, right? Like, they've already said they cannot do it. So if somehow they're able to miraculously do it, would that not raise eyebrows about, like, well, can we trust this? It's fucking fascinating. It's a real brain buster here with the pickle that Bungie finds themselves in. So the YouTube links and everything weren't even considered here because in the initial filing, well, Martineau, I don't exactly know how to say his last name, I'll be honest. That's why I've been calling him Casper Cole. Casper Cole never made any mention of, like, YouTube or wiki links, so they didn't even consider it. It was deemed, like, off limits, kind of, I guess. And then Judge Morgan also pointed out that the case is actually pretty complicated, even when Bungie cited previous rulings, saying this case would require a much more complicated side-by-side analysis even if the court had access to a complete version of Destiny 2. She also noted how the game and the written work aren't even in the same format. Rather than compare a brief movie scene and a copyright for a pinball machine, it appears the defendant is asking the court to compare a collection of short writings to 13-plus hours of third-party originated YouTube videos of Destiny 2 and several third-party originated online Destinypedia pages. Now, if you've got your thinking caps on, to me, there seems to be like a really glaring thing that I haven't seen pointed out in any of the articles. How the fuck is Casper Cole making these arguments in the first place if there is no Red War or Curse of Osiris to compare to anymore anyway? Like, how is he able to reference these things? I'm assuming the only way he'd be able to make these comparisons, since, again, the Red War and Curse of Osiris don't actually exist in the game anymore, is he would be comparing it to YouTube videos and shit. That'd be the only way. While he might not have directly referenced them in the lawsuit, there is no possible way for him to even be making these comparisons in the first place without that. So it is in a weird spot to me, because, again, there is nothing there for Red War or Curse of Osiris. They've already blinked it out. Like, it's gone. So even Casper Cole, when making these arguments, is making them against a fucking ghost. There isn't a Red War or Curse of Osiris campaign that is playable and reviewable that he is making these comparisons to. So it's a bit weird for sure. Now, at the end of the day, do I think Bungie stole his work, like copied his story beats for Destiny? Absolutely not. There is nothing I've seen listed here that screams plagiarism or anything like that. I also just highly doubt they would go to a random WordPress from 2013 and 2014 and start taking directly from it to make the Destiny campaign. That just seems so incredibly unlikely to me. But in Bungie's incompetence here, when it comes to vaulting and sunsetting, they have really shot themselves in the foot. Anyway, I just had to talk about this a bit. It seems like a pretty complicated case. If this was going to be an easy slam dunk W for Bungie here, a little dubski in the court of law against the copyright claims, probably would have been thrown out on this first motion to dismiss. So now I think it's going to get a little sticky. But maybe not. Maybe they have a trick up their sleeve. Again, I'm a fucking idiot, so who really knows? But I just found it very fascinating. That's about it. So, yeah. I often get told how negative I am, but I think we can all agree there's been a little something special that's made this Grinch's heart grow 3 sizes. And that little puppy is named Schedule 1. I haven't streamed a game this much since Elden Ring released, and I haven't made this many videos on a single game since Elden Ring released. It's pretty clear I like the game a lot. I got those anime hearts in my eyes anytime I hop on Schedule 1. I've become addicted to it, much like my clients in the game itself. Like, I feel like I'm making lifelong friends in there through this business, like Austin. That beautiful bastard is such a fiend, I could roll up a urinal cake and tell him that it's weed and he'd thank me for it. I could walk up to that man and tell him to think about meth, and he would pay me $500 just for the imagination that I put in his head for him to smoke. It's just such a fun fucking game is the point I'm getting at, and I like it a lot. And right now, it's in a little bit of legal hot water because a competitor in the drug-dealing simulator space is launching a lawsuit against them for copyright infringement. The goobers that launched the lawsuit are Movie Games, that's the publisher, and the game that they're saying has been infringed upon is Drug Dealer Simulator, which also has a sequel, And you can see that in response to them launching this lawsuit against Schedule 1, they've been review bombed and now the reviews are overwhelmingly negative. We'll get into the specifics of their claims in a moment, but I want to set the stage for anyone that might not be aware of the phenomenon that is Schedule 1. It's a drug dealing simulator game that was created by a single person. His name's Tyler. Tyler Video Game Studio. He developed Schedule 1 and launched it, and it blew up. The game is extremely fun. It maintains over 300,000 players per day with a 450k peak. This is big potatoes here. And it's an extremely fun game. I have been a big fan of the drug dealing simulator type games for a while. You might remember my Weed Shop arc. I've also played Drug Dealer Simulator, and I can say with full confidence, Schedule 1 is the best one. It has so much depth. It is so enjoyable, just with like the goofiness that it allows you to do, as well as a world that really feels alive. And there's so much you do in there, from actually selling the drugs, hiring dealers, beating up the civilians, specifically Peter. Every 24-hour period, I make sure that Peter is either beaten within half an inch of his life, shot as many times as I can possibly find ammo for, or buried alive or thrown in the ocean. And, you know, just as many times as I can torture this man, I make sure to take that opportunity to do so. He deserves it. But there's just a lot to do, even outside of, like, dealing the drugs. Like, the movement is really fun. There's a lot of tech to even just movement with the skateboard. You can also launder money. You need to launder money, actually. It's just, there's so much here. You go from weed to meth to coke. Like, I'm now in the coke trade. I'm pushing that good cocaina now, and I'm really excited. I just think the game is the best drug dealing simulator out there. Which is not like the most competitive market, you know, we're not talking about like a first-person shooter genre here. You're dealing drugs. There's only a handful of these games, and one of them, Drug Dealer Simulators, getting in a big stink about the success Schedule 1 is experiencing because its title never got to those levels. I think Drug Dealer Simulator was a fine game, but Schedule 1 is just a lot better, and it ate its goddamn lunch. And they are not happy about it, which is why they've launched this lawsuit trying to make the claim that they've infringed on their copyrights. According to Movie Games, they noticed some similarities to Drug Dealer Simulator and launched an investigation. On March 24th, 2025, the release date of Schedule 1, an internal analysis of the company's IP, including Drug Dealer Simulator and Drug Dealer Simulator 2, as well as Schedule 1 project, was initiated by the company. This analysis immediately identified the use of several elements protected by copyright, including parts of the game's storyline, mechanics, and UI. This leaves me so curious what copyrights they're referring to that have been infringed upon. Like, who's behind this company? Pablo Escobar? How could you possibly own the copyright to drug making? Like, there's just no fucking way. Like, they have a weed-making process in the real world that gets translated into the game in a silly fashion. You can't patent that. Like, Warner Bros. Has patented the Nemesis system, which I've talked about a lot. I've bemoaned that pretty frequently, but that's a very specific mechanic. This is not. You can't somehow say, like, no, we are the only company allowed to showcase coke being manufactured or being sold on the street. Like, it just doesn't work that way, I don't think. How could you possibly copyright that? It's just another game in the same genre, thus it's going to be utilizing similar methods because you're still making the same drugs in the genre. Like, very few companies ever go this far. Like, take, for example, Souls-like games, which have become the new hotness. Souls-like games are spreading like the fucking common cold. Let's take, for example, a really good one, Lies of P. Well, Lies of P didn't invent the Souls-like genre. It borrowed a lot of elements from everything FromSoft had built up over the decades. And you didn't see FromSoft sue Lies of P, and you don't see FromSoft suing Neo or First Berserker or any other really successful Souls-like games. Like, this is just a silly lawsuit, in my opinion. Now, unless they can point to things that Schedule 1 literally stole from Drug Simulator, like one-to-one, then I just don't see how they could possibly have a fucking case. And they also mentioned that the storylines... What do you mean the story? The story in Schedule 1 is you were making weed in an RV, your Uncle Nelson got busted, so you ran away, now you're in a city making weed. Which, as you grow your business, you start to branch out beyond Weenie Hut Jr. weed, and you start manufacturing and selling meth and coke and all the good stuff, the bells and whistles. That's the whole story. Drug Dealer Simulator doesn't start that way. You're not in an RV, and you don't have an Uncle Nelson. You start in an apartment, you get a call from Eddie. Like, there's not a real story to Schedule 1. The only thing these two games have in common narratively is they both use a phone to feed the player tutorials. In Schedule 1, you get Uncle Nelson on the payphone. In Drug Dealer Sim, you get Eddie on your phone. But you can't possibly copyright the phone mechanic here because so many games do that outside of just these two. Are you going to go after Rockstar Games next for their usage of phones in GTA? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's not anything narratively that I can find that's even similar between these two games, other than you start making drugs and selling them on the street. Now, if we want to get into some really nitpicky specifics that I feel like is probably going to be mentioned in this lawsuit, there are things in Drug Dealer Simulator that are similar in Schedule 1, such as the way you save the game. So in Drug Dealer Sim, you save the game here, like you'll see in Markiplier's Let's Play. In Schedule 1, you save in a similar way in the doorways. So those two things are similar, but there's no way you fucking copyright that. I have seen that exact same method of saving games in other games on Steam that I've played during, like, bad game nights. That is not unique to Drug Dealer Simulator, thus I can't imagine that that is copyrighted. Another example I think they're going to try is the body searching. So on the left, you'll see the Drug Dealer Sim body searching, and on the right, Schedule 1. I guess it's similar because they both have a progress bar. But what, did you patent progress bars in drug dealing genre? Like, I think it's just complete fucking lunacy here. Like, the body search existing in both games, that's not Schedule 1 stealing from you. That's, once again, just a whole drug dealing simulator idea in the genre, where body searches would happen with the fuzz, with the police coming through and patrolling. That's not something that is specific that was stolen from Drug Dealer Simulator, even though they both have a progress bar. You know what I mean? I think it's just silly. I think they are just so hurt that Schedule 1 has blown up like this when their game didn't, that now they're lashing out like, they shouldn't be able to make this much money when we didn't. We deserve a piece of that as pioneers in the drug dealing simulator genre, which I think is just ridiculous. Again, this is just another game in that genre that, of course, some of the mechanics are going to be similar because it's the same genre. You're still making drugs. There's only so many mechanics you can possibly have to showcase that process. And for what it's worth, it's not one-to-one in Schedule 1 and Drug Dealer Simulator. They're pretty different experiences, even in that regard. To me, this feels like if Overwatch came out and said, we're suing Marvel Rivals for copyright infringement. We're the only game in the hero genre allowed to be successful. Get the fuck out of here. Time to bully them and strong-arm them out. It's copyright infringement. It's too similar to Overwatch. And it's like, okay, the games do play similar. They're in the same genre. But you can't possibly argue that any copyright was infringed upon when these games are fundamentally different. Like, yes, they're in the same genre, but they're very, very different games. It's the same with Schedule 1 and Drug Dealer Simulator. I guess we'll see what the investigation turns up, I suppose, but from having experienced both of these games, Schedule 1 feels nothing like Drug Dealer Simulator, and I cannot imagine anything was actually stolen from them in the making of Schedule 1. Like, this just feels like such a fucking delusional lawsuit out of desperation. And it's pathetic. It makes Drug Dealer Sim developers and the publisher look like such bitches for this. Just really salty that Schedule 1 is as popular as it is. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. That's it. So, yeah. There's something very special about the way entertainment companies are run. It feels like the people at the highest level are just these soulless husks in suits that don't even understand what fun is. I honestly wouldn't be shocked to learn that half the CEOs of major entertainment brands have been lobotomized. Who remembers a couple years ago when EA tried to convince the world that their loot boxes aren't a greedy cash grab meant to squeeze as many doubloons out of their customers as possible? They were actually surprise mechanics meant to be fun. No, this isn't shady or unethical. They're fun surprise mechanics. Point I'm making is there's no shortage of delusional companies in the entertainment space. And now I think we have a winner for the most delusional company out there at the moment. Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. I'm going to put them together because it's still not super clear to me who's the one at the helm making these bafflingly awful decisions that are sinking their companies. So, Wizards of the Coast is responsible for a lot of things that you probably love. For example, me, Magic cards. While I'm not a huge Magic the Gathering player, like actively competing in like MTG Arena or anything like that, I did get very into collecting the cards. In fact, throughout all of 2016, I spent it trying to collect every masterpiece from the Kaladesh set. And I do have that finished, as well as Amonkhet as well. So I was a big collector of Magic the Gathering and a big fan of the property. So you can imagine my surprise and disgust when I learned that last month, Wizards of the Coast pulled down its pants and planted their stinky ass in the face of every Magic the Gathering fan. They announced the 30th anniversary set for Magic the Gathering. It was supposed to celebrate 30 years in the business. However, it was a complete fucking disaster for so many reasons. This is a great video right here that goes over everything wrong with it, so I highly recommend checking it out if you're curious. But I'll break it down for you in a nutshell. Magic the Gathering, in their 30th anniversary set, announced that they'd be reprinting some of the most famous cards, you know, like the Black Lotus that I'm sure all of you have heard of before. However, this was a set that was priced at $1,000 per 4 packs. For 4 packs, you get randomized cards, so you don't even really get the cards you want, you're still gambling on them, for $1,000. So you could just get, like, actual fucking popsicle sticks in your pack, but you paid $1,000 for it. And not only that, none of the cards are legal. You can't use any of the cards, they're fake. You're paying for proxies. They're not real fucking cards. So you're paying $1,000 for 4 packs of randomized garbage, hoping that you get like one of the Power 9, and you can't even use them. It's a giant scam. Like, you're just getting hosed for money. It's extremely greedy. It was a terrible celebration for 30 years because this was just them spitting in the community's face. Another slimy thing they did is they refused to allow local card shops to carry 30th anniversary packs. You could only get them directly from Wizards of the Coast, so it shut down card shops even being able to offer these. There's a lot of other things that went into it, but this is just the glaringly obvious stuff because it's Wizards of the Coast just slapping the community and showing complete disrespect for them. And this was only one of 2 major fumbles they've had in the last month. Their biggest one is what I'm actually here to talk about today. Wizards of the Coast is behind Dungeons & Dragons, as I'm sure most of you know. Dungeons & Dragons is arguably one of the most popular brands ever. Dungeons & Dragons is something I'm sure everyone's heard of. Even if you don't play it, even if you joke about it, you call everyone a turbo nerd who plays it, doesn't matter, you've heard of it. It's an extremely recognizable name, and now Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are using it like a cum rag. They have just potentially ruined what made Dungeons & Dragons such a massive success. There's another great video going over this topic in detail, so I highly recommend checking this one out if you're curious as well. The links to both of these videos will be in the description. I just want to hit on the broad topic here and go over everything. So, Wizards of the Coast is targeting Dungeons & Dragons because they believe it is under-monetized, which is of course scary for the communities that love these games. I've only done one full Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and I had a great time doing it. Don't really want to talk about the GM behind the game. That was a whole can of worms that, you know, we don't need to get into the weeds of. But the game itself, I really loved it, and I definitely understand people's passion for it. So the community's outrage here is warranted 100% because their idea completely shuts down pretty much everything that made this game so popular. So let me go ahead and put a bib on you as I feed you these vegetables. Hasbro's not doing so hot financially. They dropped 40% last year, and they've had to cancel quite a few projects. And they started to realize, well, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro started to realize that Dungeons & Dragons, being their biggest IP, isn't super well monetized when you look at the actual, you know, nitty-gritty of it. It's estimated that Dungeons & Dragons has pulled in about $1.3 billion. However, they've only seen around 100 to 150 million in revenue from D&D. So they're leaving a lot of money on the table, and they're doing everything they can to get their hands on those extra schmeckles that they're not currently putting in their pocket. So they started turning their attention towards the community and speculating on how could they monetize that sector, because that's by far where most of the money is being generated. Something like Critical Role, which is the biggest stream on Twitch when it comes to the amount of money that it's bringing in, like subs and all of that. Critical Role is a third-party Dungeons & Dragons production that is their own custom experience and campaign that is so big that it even got its own Amazon Prime show. So there's a lot more like Critical Role, but they're by far the biggest. It's very much so that Dungeons & Dragons has the most success because of their open game license.
And who better to monetize than the people who create their own content better than them? This takes us to the open game license. For those who don't know, any Dungeons & Dragons content that is created by anyone other than Wizards can only do so because of the Open Game License, a document that effectively allows people to create and profit off of their own original Dungeons & Dragons content. No paperwork needed, no need to pay anyone royalties, just go for it.
I would argue that the Open Game License with Dungeons & Dragons is solely responsible for its massive explosion over the last decade, because this Dungeons & Dragons content, the homebrew, all of these custom campaigns, have been a massive success online. And now you can take that old Open Game License and shove it right up your ass, because it is worthless now. According to new information, as well as, again, some unconfirmed leaks, but there is a lot of meat behind the authenticity of it. There's a lot of things that suggest that this is accurate, and I'll get into that in a moment. According to these upcoming changes, all of that is obsolete. So, 3 things that you're immediately going to have to do is you're going to have to agree to these new terms that are coming out. You're going to need a badge on your work, and you're going to need to report everything that you're selling using the Dungeons & Dragons property, as well as report all of your earnings, like 50 grand plus, stuff like that. But that's not the worst of it at all. That's small potatoes compared to the bigger changes. So one major thing that is now 100% going into effect, as I understand it, is if any of these custom campaigns are making above $750,000 in a year, they're now going to be subject to royalties that will need to be paid to Wizards of the Coast. Now, you might be hearing that number and being like, wow, that's a lot. That sounds reasonable. These are major players like Critical Role. I mean, they should be paying royalties. And you can debate that all night and day till the cows come home, that's fine. But it only gets more brutal from there and more suffocating. So it's not only just targeting the major big boys, it's kind of targeting everything, at least according to the leaks. And mind you, this seems to be applied retroactively, so anything that existed on the old Open Game License is now obsolete. That whole agreement is unauthorized.
Yesterday, January 4th, a journalist named Linda Codega stated that she received the new OGL from a reputable, unnamed source. You will owe 25% on any money that you make that exceeds $750K. The leak also says that if you release on Kickstarter, you only have to pay 20%, which sounds strange, but the director of games at Kickstarter, John Ritter, retweeted the thread with the leak and said that Kickstarter was contacted after Wizards decided to make OGL changes.
So this is where the information's coming from. This is where the leak all started. Now, I think there is a lot of merit behind this being a very real possibility, considering that a higher-up at Kickstarter retweeted this document, as well as giving more insight that Wizards of the Coast did contact them about that 20% share. So that feels like this is something that they're strongly considering implementing sometime relatively soon. Now let's get to the change that is by far the scariest one for the community. In here it says, one of the caveats is the company can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice. So what does this mean? Well, a lot of you may have found $750K to be reasonable, like, okay, that's a lot of money, they can take some royalties on it, that's fine. But with this in here, it's them saying, okay, it doesn't really have to be $750K. As long as we give you 30 days notice, we can come swoop in and like terminate this whenever we want. Or they can modify it whenever they feel like it. Like, hey, Junior, I saw you and your high school theater troupe was running this YouTube channel for a D&D custom campaign. You guys made like, what, $3 grand in ad revenue over the last year? Well, Hasbro's really fucking sinking down the shitter right now. We're down another 40% this year, so I think we're going to come take some royalties on that. Here's your 30-day notice, just, you know, giving you a heads up. Like, they can now just continuously change things as long as they give you that notice. There's just no security. There's no stability for anyone that is making these third-party D&D, this content, anything like that. It's just a very scary area for it to be in right now. And if all of these leaks are accurate, if all of these changes do come true, I absolutely could envision this being the end of Dungeons and Dragons. Because no one's just playing vanilla Dungeons and Dragons, not to the level that people are doing these third-party stuff and their own custom adventures. So, like, if that element is gone, most people are just not gonna really play. Like, you know how many new people Critical Role brought to Dungeons and Dragons? An incalculable amount. That's how probably the majority of people have found it more recently, is things like Critical Role and the other big players in the space. So if they can no longer flourish, well, you're going to lose a lot of potential players or a lot of existing community members. They'll go somewhere else. They'll start their own stuff in a less restrictive environment. It is absolutely a potential community killer here. They've made an enemy out of the people that use their property. The people that are the biggest fans, they have now vilified. And I don't see how they could possibly view this as a positive change that'll end up making them more money. That 100 to 150 mil that they're making right now, should all this go through, I think gets slapped in half. Like, I don't see them making money on it. Of course, I could be very wrong. I'm not the most savvy businessman in the world, but this is, like, if you're going to kill the community, who the fuck's going to be buying shit from D&D if there's no longer a flourishing community to support it? So it's just a nonsensical, greedy change. And if you want more information on it, again, this video goes into more detail about all of it. And there's a lot of content and topics talking about all of it because it's such a big deal. So yeah, again, none of it's fully confirmed, but there is a lot to suggest that this could be right around the corner. And I wanted to talk about it because I think this is probably the most delusional company move I've seen since Tumblr banned porn. I don't know what they're thinking here. The greed is getting the best of their brains and they're making rash, terrible choices. So yeah, I wanted to talk about it a little bit and that's about it. So yeah.